The Super Metal Brothers podcast is the best. Really great stuff. I was in my car listening, and I was like, there just is not a better podcast.
All right, we are back for episode 7. This is going to be our third album review. No more reaction radio. We've heard the people. People don't like reaction radio, I guess, because we're getting very low views on it.
No, I think we've kind of learned a lesson from that to have variety, but also we've learned we're just not going to come out first in the races with the reactions and things like that. We're just going to go at our own pace and do the shit we want to do and what you guys want to hear. So having the first reactions out or the first people to say something about whatever, we're just not going to do that for now.
Today, we're going to be reviewing Sold Soul. I hope we make it out of this alive.
I've been excited about this one, man. We were going to do Distance Heritage album, but I think we decided because we've been going back and forth with communications with members of Sold Soul. I just really wanted to do this one a little bit more. We'll get around to Heritage.
Yeah, fuck yeah. This is like one of my favorite albums. I was so excited to do this one because that meant that I actually had a reason to listen to this album over and over again. And I fell more in love with it as we did it. We'll get more into this as we go into the review. The sound of this album, it's dark.
Yeah.
It's a really dark album. It just reminds me of something I was doing with my daughter a couple weeks ago. We're driving back from some like sporting event or something. We had just watched Rick and Morty. And it was like that episode where like they keep on branching off into alternate dimensions. So it's like split screen the whole time. But like each one does something a little different, right? So my daughter, she's 9. She was asking about like what are parallel dimensions and stuff like that. So of course the geek in me just like
went off, just blew her fucking mind, dude.
So I was like, there's these, parallel dimensions. Some people think that the universe expands forever, which means that every pattern that can exist will repeat itself an infinite amount of times, which means that the earth and us on it having this conversation right now could be happening an infinite amount of times. I said even more so, that also means that every little variation of what could possibly be happening right now is also happening an infinite amount of times. So even as small as like this whole world and the exact same thing going on.
Okay,
right now.
Hold on. Can we just cut like to because I feel like the existential dread is coming on. I'm already about to get a fucking panic attack. I can't imagine what this 9-year-old feels like.
Yeah, and I was like, so, imagine the world, just one molecule is missing, but everything else is the same. That's also happening an infinite amount of times. And there's also a version where we crash right now and die. And I was like, and also every version of the possibilities of us dying is happening right now an infinite amount of times. So I said, every moment that you live in life, you're both living and dying an infinite amount of times and dying in horrible ways infinitely. I went even deeper than that, but that's just the wave tops of what I said. I was on my own rant,
dude.
I was on my own rant and I look over at my 9-year-old daughter sitting in the passenger seat and she's having a full-blown existential crisis. Like you could tell that she had never even fathomed the idea of every moment I'm dying in every possible way. Like, what are even the ways that I could die? Like, it was all coming across her. I was like, man, yeah. I thought about it. Like one time I got high and I thought about like, what if every moment the you that exists right now dies and the you that exists a moment from now is a completely different person, and you're just millions of people that have lived a life for however many years you've been around, and you've just died every moment and you don't even know because you just carry the same memories as the last person. And I was high when I thought of that, so I'm not really able to smoke pot anymore because I'm afraid to go through that crisis again.
You're not allowed to ever do DMT. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, definitely not.
I mean, if you're blasting off on fucking weed like that, nah. That's like child abuse, what you put her through, by
I know.
the way.
I felt pretty bad. I was
up.
like, dude, that's going to cost me a lot in medication. Dude, I did shrooms once and I thought that interdimensional beings were trying to communicate with me by pressurizing my ears.
Yeah.
Like Morse code.
I'll say on that note, this album we're about to review is not something I would want to listen to on any sort of fucking psychedelics or anything adjacent to that. It's just a no-go. I love when we do albums like these that are so like heavily themed themed because obviously it deals with a lot of folklore within the album. And it's so easy to draw inspiration based off that for shit to talk about this podcast. I think we both agreed we're like, let's go home and watch Underworld. I'll just see what goofy shit we can come up with. I was gonna watch Van Helsing, the one with Hugh Jackman. I was like, nah, making jokes about that is like kicking someone while they're already down. And I say that as someone who absolutely adores that movie. It's a piece of shit.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, when I went back, and I know you did the same thing. I actually watched the whole entire Underworld series.
Oh, I just watched the first one.
Yeah, I watched the first one. I just realized, like, first off, complete ripoff of the Matrix. It's just
It's
Matrix.
Matrix.
Vampires and Matrix.
It's Matrix for gay vampires.
Yeah, it definitely is. There's a gay vampires. We promise 5%, folks. The thing that I noticed the most is like the chick. What was that actress's name?
Kate Beckinsale.
Yeah, Kate Beckinsale.
It's another one that's been tainted by Pete Davidson.
Yeah.
That dude must have a dick the size of a fire hydrant.
He has something. I don't know what it is. Maybe he just has a good sense of humor. I doubt it, though.
Does he, though? Because I don't think he's funny at
His
all.
skits suck on SNL. Mostly just does work about his dead dad that died in 9/11, which, hey, whatever. That's pretty dark. No, I just noticed that Kate Beckinsale, that she's part of this like elite group in Underworld that's like the Lycan killers. I think they called them the Death Dealers, which
Yeah.
they have like all these extra powers, but her real only power is just doing backflips at really inappropriate times. It's like the dude's already dead on the ground, and then she decides to do a 30-foot backflip and then land, and nothing happens. It's like, that's half the movie.
That's like at the end when she like takes that swing at Victor with his own sword. It was like there was no need to like anime jump like 50 feet in the air after the fact.
Yeah. Where
Or
she
like whatever the
slices his
fuck.
head.
Yeah. You could have just walked up. He was like 10 feet away from you. You could have just walked up to him and just like fucking cut his head off.
You should have said spoiler alert before that. You just ruined someone's day. I've been
Oh,
waiting to
that's
watch
right.
Underworld this whole time.
Those movies are lame as fuck too, but they're good for what they are. I love them. I mean, they're great just action flicks.
For their day. For their day.
Yeah. I mean, and they're riding off the success of The Matrix, obviously. Everybody's wearing like tight black leather. Why that was a thing in like the early 2000s is beyond me.
Shiny black leather doesn't have a camouflage effect at all.
Well, I don't think they're trying to hide. I mean, they were just like jumping off the building and like fucking with all these people walking around. Like they just jumped like 200 feet from the air and just landed perfectly in front of people. You know, I think my only gripe with those movies, because like I'm a huge werewolf buff. I love all that werewolf shit.
Yeah, same here.
In particular, that first movie, God, that first iteration of werewolves was fucking terrible in my opinion. They looked like
The clay animation. It looks like
dude,
clay animation.
I was gonna say it looked like they were like sculpted out of like brown Play-Doh with like pubes smeared on them. Because when I imagine werewolves, I imagine them, you know, covered in like a thick fur. All the werewolves in Underworld looked like they had fucking alopecia.
Obviously, we've had this gay vampire theme the whole podcast, and that movie definitely keeps it going, keeps that mythos going. But they also introduced the gay werewolf. Like
Gay werewolf.
yeah, like the scene where Lucius walks in, the two werewolves are sitting there just stroking each other's chests, you know?
I missed that part.
And everybody's around them, basically having a circle
that
jerk,
the
watch
first
them
one?
touch each other. Yeah, that was in the first one. It's like the first time you see Lucius in the movie. They're like fighting. They're like cutting each other's chests up, but it's like rawr.
Yeah.
So, and you know what? I believe gay vampires, and I think that's real. There are gay vampires, but
I
gay
mean-
werewolves, come on.
No, it makes sense. I mean, dogs fuck anything. They dry hump just
That's
about
a good
anything.
point. Yeah.
This really, when I thought about it, is literally just like the story of cats versus dogs. There's that scene where the blonde vampire, once she realizes like homeboy like got bitten by a lichen or whatever, and she like levitates to the ceiling or whatever and starts hissing at him, dude. Imagine if your intimidation factor is like, I'm just like hiss at you. Yeah.
Yeah, she did homegirl wrong in that. First of all, your man's a vampire. That dude's banging everybody. Why you think it's crazy that he wants to bang Kate Beckinsale is not a stretch.
Yeah,
And she gets all mad about it.
they always depict the vampires as like these aristocrats. Like is this the French Revolution? So they're all like done up like it's a fucking masquerade. But if vampires were to exist in that medium, they would have killer fucking orgies. Like no pun intended. they'd be the best.
Yeah.
I mean, they're probably just fucking everything that moves, dude. They're definitely pansexuals of like the horror film medium.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So, I mean, that's Underworld. But that's not what this podcast
that's
is
our
about.
review of Underworld.
That's our review of Underworld. If you were ready for a flash review of a movie that nobody cares about anymore, you just got it. So now we're going to jump into the Sold Soul album review. I'm really excited about this one. This is our third album review. And of all of them, I've listened and done the most research on this one. I think I went the most deep. So really excited about it.
I did too. I had to like kind of restrain myself because I had almost too much to say. I was like, I got to reel it back a little bit. This episode's going to be like 3 hours long.
Yeah. So I wanted to learn because with this album came an announcement I think this album came out either September, October. I can't remember the release date specifically of last year. And when they released it, it was kind of a surprise. And they announced also that the band wasn't going to continue after that. And so I fished around looking for, because they didn't really say why. I didn't know the history of the band. I ended up asking on Reddit, if anybody knew, what happened, why they broke up. Because I was like, man, you drop a banger album and then break up. What happened?
It's almost criminal.
But also it's kind of G at the same time. So I looked into it and asked the questions, and some people gave me basically their bullshit that they thought because they really don't know. And then Ethan Grayson, the bassist, hopefully I got his last name right, he reached out to me on Reddit and basically just gave me a spiel about what happened. For anybody that doesn't know, they were just down to 2 people. They were down to Stevie and they were down to Ethan. The other band members left, went down to Stevie and Ethan. And to my understanding, they're the 2 original members. He told me that 2 guys just made this in their bedroom, this band. So I'm assuming they're longtime friends.
Yeah.
I know Stevie, he has no previous projects before Sold Soul. So good first one, man. But that's a solid first band. I'm sure he's had other garage bands and stuff, but as far as I know, this is his first truly serious to make it to this level. Him and Ethan were together. They decided they had already started For Whom the Banshee Cries, which is the single off of this.
And that came out in 2019, I believe.
Yeah, that's older. And you can tell it fits with the theme of the album, but it's different.
Yeah, I could hear some things in the mix that were just slightly different than, the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, and that really goes back to, there's a post by Stevie on Facebook where Stevie O'Shaughnessy, which I'm going to say O'Shack Hennessy for the rest of the time that I talk about him.
O'Shack.
Yeah, O'Shack. So he had posted basically that this was before the album came out, that they were going to drop a release and that this was going to be the end. It was down between the 2 band members, and that's a lot to carry, especially.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially with the amount of stuff that goes into these guys' songs.
Well, and this is something we kind of touched on, maybe not necessarily in the podcast, but the amount of work that gets put into these projects. The fan recognition has been great. I mean, I think pretty much everybody's on the same page that this album's great. Everybody loves fucking Sold Soul. I haven't heard a single bad thing.
No.
But, when you put this much time, effort, at the end of the day for really little to show with it, I mean, these people, they make a fucking pittance. And that's even if you're a touring band.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I can't imagine if you have a whole work life, a family, and then you're trying to do all this shit, dude. It's got to be rough.
Yeah, he quoted mental health and that he had been thinking about it for a year. And at the end of that was actually probably the saddest thing I've heard in relation to this album. He said, I'm turning off this account because that account was like Stevie from Sold Soul or whatever the name of the account was. And he said, I'm just going to be Stevie. He does not plan on doing anything else.
Like he's completely dropping the mic.
So I hope that, because he's an amazing vocalist, I really hope that finds it in him to bring it back. But if he doesn't, hey, thanks for the bangers. We definitely appreciate it. I just wanted to make a short point. Me and Solaire, we were at a concert not that long ago, and we ended up running into Lee McKinney randomly standing in the crowd. And I recognized him because he's a ginger like me. So I recognized gingers.
You came up to me I remember because I had just walked out of the pisser and I was standing in line to grab another beer. And you ran up to me like a little fucking schoolgirl. You're like, dude, Lee McKinney's here.
Lee McKinney, yeah.
I was like, no, you're fucking lying.
I wasn't sure it was him because he did look skinnier than he does in pictures. Some of those photographers do a lot of good work. They really do. Because he was like a skinny dude. I don't know if I know that he's been going through some stuff right before that, but I'm just a big fan. I think he's a great guitarist.
Yeah.
I wanted just to go up and say hi. So I just went up, shook his hand and, said, hey, I'm a fan. And he was really wholesome, dude. He
super down to earth, man, chill. And he gave us the time of day and it really felt like just a natural conversation that we were having as opposed to us just, fucking glossing all over him. But then this fucking chode walks up and he's like, hey man, I love your stuff. Even after Jason Richardson left, you still kill it. I was like, dude, why you gotta go and say some shit like that?
Yeah.
This is a dumbest
Well, he
shit.
said it like, even without Jason Richardson, you guys still sound good or something like that. And I was like, and I'm standing there like, I'm mad for this guy. Like, what does that have to do with anything? So,
but man, he took it like a champ.
yeah, and he didn't take it wrong in any way, but just for anybody that listens to this, you go to concerts and stuff, a lot of times you see bands selling their own merch.
The way it was put to me is like, if you had to divide everything up after like merch cuts, if a venue does that, paying off whatever loans you have to a record company, all that bullshit. If you're selling t-shirts, basically each band member's getting like a quarter a t-shirt, which is fucking insane.
Yeah, so I just tell people, buy some merch if you can afford it. That's one of the best ways to support a band as far as I know. They make the most cut off of that. The tickets and everything else, they don't really make that much money off of. And also tell them that you love the music. They make music. I'm sure they don't get tired of people telling them that you love it. A lot of these musicians, they get down and they get into these echo chambers of depression, following people on social media and stuff. You see that like there's been a lot of, shit posting by band members lately about, merch problems and ticket problems and dealing with the bullshit that has to do with the industry. So, just show them some love. They're doing something that obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, you must love music. So continue to support them, go to the concerts and buy the merch and help them out.
To kind of touch on that just a tad bit further, I'm not sure what can change that can benefit these guys further, because I mean, they really, at least to me, they deserve to at least make a living at the very least.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm not sure how to circumvent that. I'm not sure what needs to change. If anybody has any ideas, I mean, shoot us a message. I'm curious to get the message out there. If there's something that we as fans need to do on behalf of these bands, I say let's fucking do it. The money should go to them. I mean,
I agree 100%. So let's get into the actual album review. So we talked about the band members. So on this album, the band name is Sold Soul, if you haven't caught that yet. The album name is I Hope We Make It Out of This Alive, which I saw a post somewhere that said, I guess they didn't. This band was formed in 2017. At least that's according to Instagram. The subgenre that they listed, I believe, on their website says Black and Deathcore. In that post by Stevie, and also something that Ethan said to me on our chat and Instagram, is that they weren't actually trying to make a deathcore album here, and I actually think they were successful in branching out from deathcore. It's got elements, but I wouldn't call it a deathcore album. So we'll definitely get into that. They got 2 full-length LPs, and then they have 2 EPs from what I can see. And the album before this was Into the Mouth of Hell. I gave that a couple listens as well, and it's awesome. Very deathcore and very different from this album.
Because I know you were kind of praising Into the Mouth of Hell, which it is a really good album. Having said that, I do think I Hope We Make It Out of This Alive is the superior album.
No, 100%. So Into the Mouth of Hell was their last album, and then they came out with this one. Also, I wanted to call out that Simone Pietroforte, hopefully I said that right, was the producer and engineer on this. The production on this was really well done, especially when you start hearing some of the instrumental stuff going in the background. It's
Agreed.
Pretty amazing. They fit all that in there. Yeah, so the album length is 56 minutes. There's 12 tracks. There's no waste in those tracks either.
No filler whatsoever.
Yeah, it's just banger. It's just song after song. No like piano interlude whatsoever. The most streamed song on the album was For Whom the Banshee Cries, because it was released in 2019. It got over 1 million streams. And just to give you the bottom line up front, this album's got a shitload of instrumentals. There's violin, there's choruses in the background. There's, women screaming out of nowhere, like in a, sonically pleasing way. There's like literally everything dark that's ever been musically is in this album. So,
well, on top of that, I want to mention the amount of fucking features. They just went above and beyond, especially with the people that they picked to feature. It was fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, and even if you just read the track names, you got Sea of Ghosts, Summon of Dragons, Valley of the Lycans. It's very mythological themed. Ethan, told me that him and Stevie are very into all the lore. The naming conventions suggest to me that they actually are into the lore, because there's some like deep stuff in there I had to read into. I was like, oh.
They LARP on the weekends.
Yeah, they might LARP.
They fucking LARP.
Yeah, they're fucking lightning bolting to the fucking ceiling, dude. Lightning bolt. There isn't a central theme. I thought this might be a concept album, maybe after a book or something like that. It's just usually deathcore, and a lot lot of the music today, they focus on kind of the large monster kind of aesthetic.
Yeah.
All the thy art is murder, like double-headed weird dragon demon thing, that type of stuff. This is more about, werewolves, vampires, that type of stuff. So I really like the theme to it.
And I took it as like each song kind of covers like a different theme or like piece of lore or like some kind of mythical creature. Usually it's like a collective of stories.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, agreed. It's like going through one of those like fairy tale books that
exactly.
has story after story. Yeah. And the last, note on the album in general I wanted to talk about is the last time I listened to this, I had just listened to Distant's new album, Heritage. And one thing I noticed about this album is it's a lot easier on the ears than the newer deathcore stuff. And I mean that in a good way, because Distant, I can't listen to over and over again. It's a great album. It's like you walked out of a concert.
It blares you the fuck out.
There's so much going on that you don't have to blast it at like the top, volume to enjoy it. It's still, even at a lower volume, it's enjoyable. I thought that was something that's interesting, and not a lot of this harder music is doing that right now. So we'll just go straight into the first track, The Devil's Cacophany.
I think it's cacophony.
I want to say cacophany.
It's cacophony.
Okay, which I did look up, is a harsh, discordant mixture of sound.
Hey, I looked up the definition too.
Yeah, so it definitely matches the song. My initial thoughts on this track were it stages you for the album really well.
Yeah.
If you listen to the violin parts in it, it slowly kind of gets more intense throughout the course of the song. It's almost like a blackened, Stairway to Heaven in a way.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, it kind of slowly moves up.
It wasn't like in my top 5, but I pretty much liked every song on this album, so I'll just go ahead and say that. What I really love about this being the starter song, and then them not fucking around with like a super long intro or anything, they just get right into it. It's like basically like, all right, straight to business, lads. Fuck God, basically. It's like the song, dude. Because the lyrics kind of deal with a lot of like anti-religious themes. You'll see the trend they kind of set with each song, how they arrange the lyrics and the storytelling. It's actually really, really well done. This song in particular, it gets, not only does it prepare you for the album, but it also gives like a great example of how well the symphonics are intertwined with the instruments to where it feels like really natural. Like it doesn't feel synthetic. It doesn't feel like it was like some software running on a computer. Like the symphonics are put in there very methodically.
Yeah, agreed. So there was one part of the song that really stood out to me in this track. These are really punishing guitar riffs. They're just so low and bassy that they keep it real even keeled. So it's a breakdown, but it's not as impactful as like something like hurts your eardrums when it hits you. So here it is. This is at the 3:35 mark on The Devil's
Cacophony.
Cacophany. That's the end of the song, but it really gives sets a stage, like I said, for the whole entire album, because there's lots of those intermissions where, Stevie's going off. He's just got a chuggy riff in the background that's super low, man.
Into the next one. For track 2, we have Hunt Above, Dwell Below. This one was definitely in my top 5. The lyrics go hard as fuck. And this song just in general goes hard as fuck. It just gets right into it. It doesn't fuck around whatsoever. And I'm going to play a clip just so you can see what I'm talking about. Yeah, dude, I love that blast beat section just straight into the song. Yeah, the first song sets the stage for the album, and then the second song is usually like they just hit you hard as fuck. And they followed that same formula here.
This song had a feature on it, and that was Cameron McBride
From Meth Witch.
He basically has to put on his Facebook like, hey, if people say that they've seen us in concert, they're fucking lying because I'm the only member. So therefore nobody can play in concert.
I saw that shit too.
Which is kind of funny. People are like, yeah, I saw Meth Witch back in 2007. They rocked, brother.
Fucking opened up for him back in 2008.
This was the most Thal track on the album. There were some like solid Thal parts.
Yeah?
I'm going to play one right now. And this part comes in at about the 148.
I see what you're saying. Vildiarda for sure. And Humanity's Last Breath.
There's a couple parts in there that you get that, chef's kiss, Vildiarda part in there. So I really like that part. It's the only song that I got that vibe from, but every song on this album has a different little flavor to it that none of the other songs have. So they did a really good job of keeping this real deep, dark theme with mythological creatures. And then they have like these different flavors of like extreme metal, I guess we'll call it, that exist throughout the album.
Yeah, there's like different variants that they kind of put in there for each song, which was, again, just really well done on their part and really well thought out.
All right, so the next track is Summit of Dragons. This features Chris Wiseman. This is the same Chris Wiseman from Shadow of Intent and Currents.
He's the guitarist for both those bands, but he does the vocal chorus on this one.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Which, whoa, because Currents is like fucking dope as shit. Shadow of Intent is fucking dope as shit. Like, that guy's part of like two of the fucking greatest bands.
He's eaten, dude.
I was surprised because Shadow Intent's like people rant and rave on the deathcore side, the darker stuff that they do. And then Currents is pretty much top for the metalcore side. So he's kind of handling both those sides of the coin.
Yeah, definitely one of the elite in both aspects. Fucking amazing. It feels like I'm listening to an epic. Like I'm actually like sitting in a symphony, and then the lyrics are just so good for this song. I cast my soul into your flames, heed the worm who reigns. I will never be the same as I burn away. The first part is like atop the highest peaks. I swear I saw death. Like I feel like I just like stumbled upon a dragon. I was like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
Like,
oh shit, I'm dead.
Yeah. One of my favorite parts of the entire album is this part where the violin comes in, and they do it in such a way because it shares like kind of the same progression as the guitar, and they kind of alternate and work in tandem with each other. Yeah, so this is that part I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's fucking dope.
Dude, I love that part. Yeah, that's probably my favorite symphonic part off the entire album.
Yeah, that was one of the top for me too. That it's just so good. All the violin work on this album is really good. What was the timestamp on that one?
That one was 147 to 213.
Summit of Dragons definitely probably one of my top ones off this album. So next up is
Valley of Lichens at track number 4. Another one in my top 5. This one's featuring Stu Block from Into Eternity.
Also of Iced Earth.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Yeah, that's old school shit right there.
This song's just banger from, start to finish. I love everything about this song as well. This is probably sitting at like number 2, number 3 is my favorites. It definitely has one of my favorite riffs and verses off the entire album. Timestamp for the verse is at 150 to about 201. They play like kind of a slow version at the start, but the second and third version, they do like a different variant where they pick up the tempo on it, and I just love it. I love the twang in that fucking riff.
This song definitely has as far as instrumentals go, it would like, and when I say instrumentals, I mean all the stuff other than guitar, bass, vocalists, and drums, stuff. I imagine that a lot of this is being programmed.
You mean like the symphonics or like
the
drums
symphonics,
and shit?
the violin, piano stuff, that type of stuff. It just really was up there for like one of the best symphonic tracks I've heard. I really loved it.
Man, whoever is programming, they're just at an expert level. They know exactly where to put the shit, what level it needs to sit at. It's beautifully done.
Yeah, and even just listen to the opening part of the song. It's crazy. So there's like werewolves. There was like chorus, like a female sounding chorus, orchestra. There's so much going on in that intro and all that stuff in the background. They really did a good job with it.
It almost feels like, because I try to associate everything with the theme, like kind of makes your heart race, like you're actually being chased by fucking werewolves, like through the forest or some shit.
Yeah, it definitely does. Like Lycan's about to eat your ass off. Yeah. So let's go to the next track, Cathedral of Dracul. This one was an interesting one for me, to say the least, because I'm going to be real honest. That there's Twisted Insane is featured on this song. I've never been really big on rap in music like this. So when I first heard it, I wanted to hate it. I was like, I don't like this track. Then like the second or third time I heard it, the music around the rapping, I was like, it's a pretty dope song. And then I listened to it again and I found myself liking the rap part. It fits in the song. It fits on the album. Some people do rap features and it just doesn't belong whatsoever. This guy definitely, if you look at Twisted Insane, the stuff he does, like it's this is obviously in his realm of things to do.
He's associated with strange music. So none of anything about this is outside the realm of what he fucks around with.
Yeah.
I actually had the opposite reaction where like the first time I heard it, I fucking loved it immediately because, I mean, he was just rapping fast as fuck, about, vampires and Dracula and shit, but doing it with that Twisted Insane flavor. And I could tell they were just having fucking fun with it. But it was funny because at first I didn't know it was Twisted Insane and thought it was funny if, Ethan or Stevie or whoever was like, reaching out like, via email or whatever and just saying, hey, we're looking for, someone to spit bars on our black metal band. And then, Twisted Insane shows up. They open the door and he's just like fucking confused. He's like, wait, hold up. Y'all motherfuckers is white?
I thought this was going to be a Blacula take.
Yeah, fucking Blacula. Dude, actually, because, I mean, we're beating the dead horse with Dracula shit. This was a major missed opportunity to not explore the deep lore of Blacula.
Oh, yeah.
Which I'll get into a little bit because Blacula, okay, it was a film in the 1970s and it's a wholesome family flick, first and foremost. The story of Blacula. The African prince goes to Transylvania in hopes to make Count Dracula his ally so that they can bring up slave rings. And instead, Dracula's like, nah, I'm just going to fuck your bitch. They get into a tussle in the movie and Dracula ends up biting this African prince or whatever.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, I guess kills his girl or whatever. And this is a pivotal piece of the lore is he curses him with the name Blacula. So that's not like just giving someone like a joke name. He hexes them with the name Blacula that he has to carry for the rest of his life.
You shall pay, Black Prince. I curse you with my name. You shall be Blacula.
Blacula, the Black Avenger, rising from his tomb to fill the night with horror. Blacula, Dracula's soul brother, deadlier even than he.
Now it gets a little more interesting where he gets stuck into a coffin and then in modern times, during the 1970s, two gay guys, and they made it very clear that these were two gay men that stumble upon Blacula's coffin, right? The first thing he does is he wakes up and he gorges on two gay guys, proving our point, vampires are targeting gays. I found that particularly interesting. We're onto something here.
We are onto something.
I'm telling you, man, the AIDS crisis was invented to combat fucking vampires, dude.
Wow. There's so many ways that
You gotta cut them off at the food source, man.
yeah, that whole spiel.
It didn't make the first time we tried to talk about it.
That's a really tough subject for two bald bearded white guys to talk about.
Dude, we might be gay. They don't know.
I'm gay for you, bro. Anyways, so it's funny that you brought up
Blacula. Chin yes, bitch.
the actual part of the song that I wanted to bring up was Stevie does this high pitched goblin voice in this song, right at about the 1 minute mark. Yeah, and I like how he changed it up there. So he has good highs and good lows. He's a really stellar vocalist, man.
You know what I noticed with him is I get a lot of callbacks, or maybe not callbacks, but like influence. I hear a lot of Dan Watson. They have a very similar sound and style, I kind of noticed. Which, if you sound like Dan Watson, I mean, you're already doing something right.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing. And then there's no way that would ever be a bad thing. And since we talked about Twisted Insane, we probably got to play his part too. So here's that part.
I love how it goes into that fucking breakdown right after he finishes.
Yeah. It's dirty as fuck too.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. That's why I said, like, when I first heard that part, I was like, I'm not sure about that. I heard the rest of the song, and even that riff that comes right after it made it worth listening through the part that I thought I didn't like, and then eventually I liked it. So kudos to Twisted Insane.
Yeah, moving on. So track number 6 is Sea of Ghosts. I didn't pull any clips for this one. Not another song in my top 5. I like the beginning, the guitars. I like the chorus because obviously the theme of the song is like specters in the sea. I mean, obvious.
Yeah, I mean, it's called Sea of Ghosts.
But this is, if you listen to the song, it's another just great example of how, you know, the style of music, the symphonics they chose to use in it just perfectly match like the atmosphere for like the story they're telling within the song.
Yeah, so I actually disagree. So this is actually in my top 5. So this is, for me, the catchiest song on the album. And I'll tell you why. The first time I heard it, this is one of those songs, and I've said this before. Sometimes you hear a song for the first time, you're like, yeah, all right, and you go on. Then you hear it a second time, then you hear it a third time. And it's like, by the 4th time, the chorus of this song has been literally today has been stuck in my head all day. Just like you said with Matt McDougall, he puts on his friggin' big dick energy fucking chorus voice and starts singing in this low voice. It's kind of vampire-y even a little bit. And then right after this, I think it's the second time they go into that chorus or that part, and then they just pull out one of the best solos on the album. Since I got both of those clips and they're right next to each other, I'm playing both. This will take about a minute.
I stand corrected, dude. That solo does fucking thrash, dude.
I like the tone of his voice in that chorusy part. He gets that low and it like he has this tone to it, almost like he's a ghost.
Like it's kind of haunting.
Yeah.
The way
haunting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really like that song. And I would have agreed with you the first time I heard the album, or maybe even the second. So it grew on me over time.
All right. So moving on to track 7. Something's breathing in the hallway. I live alone. So
he's not actually saying he lives alone. That's a title of the track. It's not like he just threw in like, hey, I live alone, you know. Unrelated. I live alone.
So this one's featuring Matt Perrin, the guitarist for Angel Maker, who's phenomenal guitarist. What I love about this song is the lyrics, the ambience, everything kind of just builds like this sense of dread. Like almost like you get that shiver up your spine, like something's fucking like breathing on the back of your neck. Dude, you remember that time when we lived in Hot Sulphur? For anybody who's met us, you know, we're very, you know, practical, very cynical kind of dudes. I could swear that trailer we lived in was fucking haunted, dude. And this song kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah. Do you remember that night? So ghost stories on Super Metal Brothers. So I had 2 separate occasions, and we're going to go on a big rant here. I'm glad you brought this up. So we had bunk beds and our room was the size of a closet. Like you could touch the wall from the bunk bed. It was like a walk-in closet, basically. And so there was just enough room for a bunk bed, and that was it, in a closet. And we were sitting there one night, and I remember I heard like a whispery voice coming through the vents. That's where I believe it was coming through the vents, but it like wasn't saying like words,
anything
that you could make out.
Yeah.
And it would fade in and fade out. It was definitely not a person talking. Definitely wasn't. And I remember I was laying there. I thought you were asleep. I was probably 15 at the time, and I think you were about maybe 9.
Yeah.
And I remember I was like sitting there like scared out of my mind. We were home alone that night.
Yep.
And I was just like, hey, Solaire. Because that's what I called you back then. You were like, yeah. That's the way you came. I was like, do you hear that? Yeah. And we just sat there frozen. It was like probably a good 5-10 minutes that it lasted. Then it went completely away.
And then I remember the other time, man, when I think your friend Drew was over. There was 3 of us there, and it sounded like someone was running up and down the hallway.
And the dogs were barking at it.
Into Mom and Doug's room. Now, I have a third occasion. That'll be a short one, but so we basically busted out the fucking knives, dude. Like, we were terrified. And I remember us standing at the edge of the door because we thought, like, someone's in the fucking closet in Mom and Doug's room. Just literally had fucking knives in our hands. We're like, whoever the fuck's in there, you better get the fuck out right now. A quick backstory, too, is Hot Sulphur, the town we had lived in up in the mountains in Colorado, has a huge history for being, like, this old, like, bandit,
like, refuge for bandits,
basically. And apparently, you know, the marshals and all that shit, like, raided it, killed a bunch of them. And there's a bunch of ghost stories that are kind of, like, intertwined with the history of this place, which just makes it even more fucking terrifying. But the other instance I had, I was completely home alone one day, and I remember I was sitting in the living room. This was in like the dead of summer, and it still got up to like 90 degrees there in Hot Sulphur. And all of a sudden, it felt like the house just went completely fucking cold. Like I was sitting in a fucking like fridge or whatever. It just didn't make any fucking sense. And it was like, I felt like euphoric, but like it was complete fucking terror and dread. Like I was being watched by something. Yeah, I just don't know how to describe it. Creep me the fuck out.
No, that place is creepy. There's like the bandits who got killed, and that was like in the, 1800s. We lived in a prefab single wide trailer. I'm pretty sure that shit didn't exist.
It was just our next door neighbors.
Yeah. They're like, I guess we'll go haunt the trailer. Like, because obviously they didn't live there. They get killed there. You know what I mean? Yeah, that place is pretty creepy. Hot Sulphur Springs, Colorado, and Grand County, man. That place is crazy.
Yeah. So leading into that, so this track kind of just brought all those emotions back. I kind of, not in a bad way, but I kind of recall that sense of dread, like something's in the house with you. We'll get into the solo. So Mike Perrin from Angel Maker just fucking lays it down here on this song. Definitely one of the best solos off the album. And here it is. Dude, I get so fucking angry when I see dudes who can just play effortlessly like that.
That's probably the best solo on the whole album.
It's not my favorite, but it is objectively like the best.
The skill that was put into that solo was definitely like the most, at least it sounds like it. I mean, I don't know how much people have to practice to get things down, to lay things down on track, but it sounded skillful. Also, so remember I talked about all the different flavors. They produce this dark, deep sound, right? With all this symphonics going in the background. I don't know if they were inspired by IHWMIOOTA for that one song we mentioned earlier, but they definitely had some sound that reminded me of it. They had vibes of it. So they have another vibey thing that goes on. Totally hear some Dimebag Darrell in the same song. So this takes place at 146 in the song.
Oh, those verses fucking hit too, man.
Yeah.
I love this song.
I mean, that doesn't sound exactly like a Dimebag. That was a little darker than Dimebag usually went. If it's not Dimebag inspired specifically, I mean, if you play guitar, you got to, especially in this realm, you got to be a little bit inspired by Dimebag. So that I really liked that part. So different flavor. We got this dark sound. IHWMIOOTA makes sense because they're dark as shit too. But then you like got something like Pantera coming out a little bit. So they're definitely leaning on influences, and I love that. I like getting little clips of that. Like, ooh, that's like something different than everything we've heard.
All right, I think on to the next one.
Things Betwixt.
That's a Dark Souls 2 reference right out of the gate. So the starting area of Dark Souls 2 is called Things Betwixt. And
Oh, okay.
yeah.
That makes sense. So I'm not much of a gamer, so I didn't know that. But Betwixt reminds me of my friend Adam in Hot Sulphur Springs. That's the theme of this episode, I guess, is Hot Sulphur Springs reminds us of this dark music.
We grew up in gay backcountry.
Yeah, we did grow up in gay backcountry. So Adam was this guy that I met. He was one of my best friends for like 2 years when I lived in that city. And when I first met him, he was on this Necronomicon kick where it's kind of funny because he was like reading it like this is a book of the dead and, you know, you can resurrect things with it. And like he was very serious about it. And he told me the mountain behind Hot Sulphur Springs glows at night.
Oh, Mount Ross.
Mount Ross. And he resurrected a dog. The mountain has glowed ever since. If you know the history of the Necronomicon, it's a fictional work. It's not an actual like book of the dead.
Kind of like Dante's Inferno.
Necronomicon fucking gatekeepers don't come after me. But the reason that I brought that up is because he thought it made him more credible in his story by using betwixt but instead of between. So he used to always say, yeah, it's in the fridge. It's betwixt the bread, the bread and ketchup.
Adam, you silly gay bat. Really, this song is really different. It starts out with like this kind of dark, like lo-fi kind of beat at the beginning in the intro. And I really love that part. I kind of wish they would have explored a little further. They really only give you like a taste of it. That's not the clip I'm going to play, but the part I actually did enjoy out of this song is there's like this, I think it's called a sitar. It's like that Indian, like Hindu kind of guitar.
Yep.
I just thought that was a really fucking cool choice. This is again them just playing around with all the different variables they can and just trying to fit it into one album. And this is an example of that. And here it is. I love when any band incorporates shit like that, especially like that sitar, because it sounds like so like otherworldly.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Just more to what I was talking about at the beginning of this review. Like they got everything in terms of that like instrumental production part, like kind of supports the band. And sometimes it takes the lead. They did so good with that stuff. It's sitar, choruses, everything that they pulled out, violin, almost every instrument made it into this album in some way, shape or form. It's got the dirtiest riffs on the album. They're very like like diminished and just, they give you no resolution whatsoever.
Yeah.
Very dissonant. And then they also have this kind of high pitched, very Iron Maiden vibey clean in that song. And then they have the sitars, of course.
Yeah, that's the one where they went full gay vampire.
Yeah, they did. They went all the way. They were still cool. All the songs that came before this were just so top tier. This one got outshined.
Oh, for sure.
I wouldn't skip this song on the album.
No, not
Actually,
at all.
I don't think there is a song I would skip on this album. It definitely wasn't in my like top. If I had to put all the songs in order, like ones I like the most to the least, this one would probably be at the bottom.
Yeah.
But it's still a good track by itself.
Yeah, it definitely has its own identity, just like every other track. I agree that everything else kind of outshines it a little bit.
Yeah, so we'll move on to
track 9, For Whom the Banshee Cries. Man, this song's got some really fucking heavy moments in it. It almost feels like they kind of changed the pace with the chorus. This one's featuring Brittany Slays, aka Brittany Hayes, and she's done like numerous things. I can't really nail down like.
I'm pretty sure she's in Unleashed Archers, or was at the time of recording, possibly.
Oh, okay, because I remember you had called me and you're like, dude, you got to check out this Soul Soul album. Check out For Whom the Banshee Cries. So I'm assuming this is like one of your favorite tracks.
If you're someone listening to this and you've never heard this album, this is the song I would start on, because this song captivates you. The opening to this song, it's so simple. The guitar tone is perfect. It's the best opening on the album. Shivers. Or shiver me timbers.
Scissor me Xerxes. I love that guitar that comes in right there.
Yeah.
Just this build up.
So fucking beautifully done, man. Yeah, the way he comes in on that, it's like you're not expecting that to come, especially if you've never listened to this band at that point, which was my experience at that the first time I heard this. This song just really pulls you in. So there's a reason that this is the single on the album, I think, because this one will pull in new listeners, definitely.
Well, and after that first initial impact, when he comes in with his vocals, it just goes into that hard as fuck blast beat section. It's just relentless as a track. And it probably has one of the best breakdowns on the album, in my opinion. I just didn't track it. So
because I want to show off Stevie's vocals, because he has a lot of good vocals on it. This is like a little 7-second clip where he just kind of like goes off on another one of those crazy goblin screams. I'd say we didn't carry many clips from the song. And I think the reason why is because this was the song that I listened to over and over and over again. I kind of played myself out on a little bit. And then I started loving all the other songs on it. It's still top 5 for me. If it's not 5, it's maybe the 6th.
It's a great fucking single. I don't think really much else needs to be said. It stands, on its own 2 feet as a track and as a single. And I kind of agree with you, because if we're going into the next track, which was track 10, The Twin Courts of Fairy and the Perils of She. This was a late bloomer of a song for me. I didn't appreciate it until really diving into this review. This ended up becoming my favorite song off the entire album.
I thought it would be, because until this song came out, you were the only fairy in deathcore.
I just want I mean, if it's a fairy in comparison to the folklore that they're talking about, dude, I'm fairy as fuck, because they go hard, dude.
Was it Siada?
No, it's She. So I kind of went down a rabbit hole, and I love that this album was like made me an intellectual. I was like researching all this shit. So the She is actually, it's Irish folklore kind of referring to fae, or like the fairy people. So not like the Tinkerbell shit. There's a lot of ambiguous terms, but it kind of refers to an overlapping of like these different, banshees, leprechauns, selkies, mermaids, kind of all fall under what would be considered like fae or these she or fairies, basically. Just everything about this song's fucking great. It was so hard for me to even pick a clip because I could just play the whole fucking song.
Yeah, I had that problem too with a lot of these songs. The Twin Courts of Fairy and the Perils of She Ritual. So I was reading some, I guess, she lore. In ancient Celtic times, they used to believe that the she would sometimes kidnap your children and put a changeling in place of your child. Their explanation for Down syndrome way back in the day. I didn't get a chance to read like what the ritual was, but they said it was like really fucked up ritual that they would do to get the she to exchange your baby back.
Like they would do it to the Down syndrome person?
I'm not sure if that's the ritual they're talking about in the song, but it's a really fucked up thing that used to happen. Zoom out on this album. Think about all the things that this album's talking about and covering and lyrically. This isn't like normal fairies. Like these are fairies that were close to gods. They weren't like Tinkerbell, like you said. And then also you have like banshees, things betwixt. You mentioned the Dark Souls reference, but also things betwixt angles is an actual quote from the Necronomicon.
Oh, really? Oh, so that's probably where Dark Souls got it from.
Probably, related to a lot of things, but that's where the demons, like Cthulhu, the Lovecraftian demons, that's where they exist. Angles betwixt angles in alternate dimensions. There's also, something breathing in the hallway. So the, poltergeist type references, we got lichens, we got Dracula, they really covered all the lore with this. So it's not a concept album, but it basically is. Like I said in the beginning, I think that was the best analogy is like, this is like a dark fairy tale story that has all the different stories in it, like a child's book almost, where Hansel and Gretel actually get eaten.
And that was going to be like one of the pros, and I'll kind of get into it later. It's real easy for a lot of this stuff to be, cheesy about it, but this really feels like it's being told to you by a legit storyteller, someone who understands lore.
Yeah, I know from chatting with Ethan, they're very into this stuff. At least that's what I got from details he was giving me on the concept of the album. So this song more into the songwriting ability here. So fairies do give you kind of like a happy connotation when you hear the word. And I don't know if they did this on purpose, but this song is very modal in the way that they solo in it.
Are you talking about the solo in particular?
Yeah, there's a lot of little parts where it should go to like a dark note, like a darker turn, and it kind of takes like a happier turn.
I noticed that too, yeah.
If you're not big into like music theory, typically that means that they're using modes.
Yeah.
And modes give you like those little flavors. Sometimes they give you a Spanish feel, and sometimes like those like Lydians and Mixolydians, which are like happier modes, but they still don't resolve all the way. The non-resolution is what gives you kind of that darkness while being happy somehow. It's kind of weird. It's almost like melancholy.
Yeah.
Like an evil clown or something like that. I wanted to play that part with the solo. So that starts at 2:38. Yeah, so how it kind of jumps out and almost that kind of happy Renaissance-y style solo and then comes back into that darkness, that's definitely a modal move that they did there.
It's easily my favorite solo off the album.
It's unique.
Yeah.
That's why I like it. It's unique for an album today. That used to happen a lot more back in like Whitney Malmsteen days and stuff like that, where they used to go all over the modes, classical, heavy metal influence days.
Well, and I'm glad we're kind of talking about this because the next episode we're going to do is going to be our Shredders Collective, where we're going hard with just some of our favorite fucking solos.
You know what? Some people have the best memes. I got the best solos on my Spotify. I don't actually do them, but I got them on my Spotify queued up, ready to go.
This is another one where Stevie, I love the way he arranges his vocals, and I'm going to play an example of that right now. Another thing I noticed with a lot of the songs too is the way he does it is it's like he begins a new line ending with the last like syllable of the last lyric he said prior, and then it goes into like the new line. I don't know how really to explain it. It's very methodical, his placement of the words, because it comes back to like he almost has too much to say and he's just trying to fit it all in, but he does it so perfectly.
Yeah, I agree. I had the same experience with that song. Probably wasn't my favorite at first, and then it turned out to be my favorite. I just like the uniqueness. It's kind of the shining jewel that kind of shines out of the darkness, because they have kind of those like happier runs and stuff like that, kind of lifts you out a little bit. It's interesting because if you look at the tracks that come after this, we're on track 10 right now, and the two that come after is A Voyage Through the River Styx, which is a remaster from their last album, and then they have Mr. Crowley, which is a cover of Ozzy Osbourne. So in terms of original songs for this album, this is really the last track. And I'd be interested to speak to Ethan if he's willing, just to ask him what was the reasoning behind remastering this.
If we're going into the next track, which is A Voyage Through River Styx, and this is featuring Nico Apostolakis from Until We Die and his other band, Destruction of Uranus.
He has a band called Destruction of Uranus?
Yeah.
That's dope.
Yeah. Dude, I'm mad I didn't think about it.
Yeah, no, that would be my band name. That would be the name of our podcast had I thought of that.
What I love about this song in particular is it just really shows the growth of like the production, the mix, the mastering. Because if you go back and listen to the original, I'll take this version leaps and bounds over the first one.
The original is very bright in the master. And so was that album, was very bright. If they would have taken that and just put it on this album, it wouldn't have fit at all. So whoever remastered this track, I don't know if it was Stevie and Ethan or actually Simone, but whoever did it, it sounds perfect with the album.
Yeah, absolutely.
They really did a good job. The master's good.
They say it's just a remaster, so I'm assuming they didn't redo, or if they did, it was at a very limited capacity as far as like, reworking the instruments and, re-recording all that stuff. So if they did just take the original, just rough cut of the original song and just master it a different way and it sounds like that, whoever's doing the production is fucking on point.
If you call it a remix, that's a different connotation.
Yeah.
Because of all the remixed like rap songs and stuff like that. So remaster would probably be the more appropriate term, even if you did change some of the production itself.
And I actually did have a clip from this one. So no offense to Stevie, but the best goblins on this are actually done by Nico. Dude, his goblin highs are fucking insane. Yeah, and this is right about the 240 mark. If anybody's wondering, that is the sound of my anus being destroyed.
I was going to say, I wonder if it's an ass goblin, but that's a urethra goblin, dude. He's just coming straight out.
That was a urethra goblin, dude.
Yeah.
He just bursted out of my dick like that dude from The Boys.
Okay, so the final track on the album is Mr. Crowley. If you're listening to Sold Soul and you've never heard Mr. Crowley, you need to go fuck yourself because you are doing it wrong.
Yeah.
You need to go back and just listen to Mr. Crowley and probably a shit ton of Ozzy Osbourne before you come to this, because you're really not doing it right.
I mean, Ozzy is the absolute precursor, not to just, pretty much everything metal, but to this album in particular.
Yes.
I mean, this is basically homage to Ozzy.
I'm pretty sure if Ethan and Stevie told you their influences, and especially considering they put this track on their album, they were influenced by Ozzy Osbourne and probably Black Sabbath as well. Mr. Crowley's probably, in my opinion, one of the best Ozzy Osbourne songs.
I'd agree.
Definitely in my top 5 for him. And they actually did it justice. They made it their own.
You stole the words right out my fucking mouth because, I mean, it's such a love letter to Ozzy, but then to take it and make it just completely Sold Soul, completely deathcore version of it, they just did it so well. And I'm going to play a clip to showcase that. This is right at the 125 mark.
You can hear the bass and guitar, the way that they just like, I can't label that sound. Actually, it's sound that I try to get in my own music and I fail at all the time. And it's really has to do with the tone of your guitar, your bass, and even your bass drum and everything together. How the speaker almost woofs a little bit.
Yeah.
But they put their own mark on it that way. And the tone of that choppy guitar is fucking legit. Putting this track on there lays out the storyline perfectly to Nightmare Creatures.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the best fucking PlayStation games of all time. Alistair Crowley is the main antagonist in the game. And then, they got werewolves and everything like that.
Yeah.
So it's literally that for me, you mentioned Dark Souls, but this reminded me of Nightmare Creatures.
Oh, no, it's definitely more aligned with Nightmare Creatures, but anything that's going to have horror aspects to it, I would say there's probably definitely some Bloodborne sprinkled in, which is basically the modern day fucking Nightmare Creatures, if there was any, but there's like a Lovecraftian twist like halfway through the game. So there's some of that sprinkled into it. But dude, that game fucking rocked balls. And we got it stolen, dude.
Yeah, we did. I was pretty pissed when that happened.
Well, so for my top 5, man, I think at number 1 is just going to be the Twin Courts of Fairy. Number 2 is going to be Summit of Dragons. Valley of Lycans at number 3. Hunt Above, Dwell Below at number 4. And then finally, Something's Breathing in the Hallway at number 5.
It's so funny how you and we always almost agree on everything. And there's one that we completely almost disagree on, which is good just because we have different tastes. So my number 1 was Sea of Ghosts. That song is catchy as fuck. I hum it in my car. I want to listen to it all the time. My number 2 is Summit of Dragons. Number 3 is Hunt Above, Dwell Below. Specifically, Sea of Ghosts, I like the catchy chorus, of course. Some of the Dragons, I thought that was probably the best cleans on the album. Hunt Above, Dwell Below had the best guitar parts overall. Valley of Lycans, I just liked all the composition in that. There was just, all kinds of shit, violin, choruses, everything you could possibly imagine. And then Something's Breathing in the Hallway. Oh, by the way, I Live Alone. I like the solo in that one.
No, so I Live Alone.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I Live Alone.
Yeah, dude. So I'm glad that we kind of agree on those. But you know what? At the end of the day, every song's a fucking banger on this.
Agreed. I could have put all of those songs in the top 5. I'd say really the last 2 songs probably wouldn't have even been considered, but they're still good.
So now we can get into kind of our overall pros and cons. So for me, the highlights was just immersive storytelling through the lyrics, through the atmosphere that matched each song individually. No one could have done it better, honestly. It was just so masterfully done, so fucking exquisite, so much so that I'm using fucking verbiage I wouldn't normally. That's how fucking awesome it was. Because I was kind of alluding to this earlier with Into the Mouth of Hell. And I don't know fucking theory for shit. And I know even less about mixing and mastering and doing all that. This album, the way it was produced, it feels flawed by design. That's the best way I can describe that. Is, again, it's kind of hard to explain, but it kind of goes back to if everything sounds big, then nothing does. And they really allowed themselves to restrain certain parts. So it was very layered in a way that was very palatable. They didn't try to overdo it, kind of like Distance New Album, where it just blares you the fuck out. Everything sits at a very comfortable level that's very palatable. So that was definitely one of the key things that, went into me giving it a good score.
They didn't want to make a deathcore album. They wanted to make something unique, and I think they did. Even we did the review of She Must Burn in our second episode. That's a blackened deathcore album, definitely, and a good one, a good example of one. She Must Burn, Umbra Mortis.
Yeah, probably a little lighter on the spectrum of blackened deathcore.
Yeah, this one is a blackened, I don't know, just metal album, really.
Yeah, blackened death metal, kind of.
It has a lot of the extreme metal things, but they just made something unique. It doesn't have a label that you can give it that would describe it in 2 words. You'd have to explain it more than that. And I think that's what they wanted to do, is make something unique. Huge step up from Into the Mouth of Hell. Into the Mouth of Hell is a good album. Into the Mouth of Hell is a deathcore album.
Yeah.
This is not a deathcore album.
See, I would disagree. I would still say it's a deathcore album, and this actually is a good transition into what cons I do have of the album, because there are breakdowns in the album. I would say the breakdowns overall were kind of lackluster on the album. I got so overwhelmed by all the other amazing factors that I didn't care. By the end of the album, I didn't give a shit about the breakdowns whatsoever. So they succeeded in not trying to be a deathcore album.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So while I say that as a con, really it's to the benefit of the album and Soul Soul and what they were trying to achieve with it.
The breakdowns lack the impact that you get with a lot of those, 808 drops that you hear in music today. Lacks probably a bad word. It just isn't there by design. Like you said,
Right.
It's flawed by design. I would say there is no real con for me. Those are things that when I originally listened to it, that's what I wanted to hear because that's what I've been hearing lately. So definitely turned me on to something different.
This isn't really a con either, but I kind of put it in the list. Was biggest bummer about this album was listening to it, enjoying it so much, basically knowing that no matter what, we're basically not getting another Soul Soul album, or we're never going to see this played live, which fucking sucks.
Yeah,
dude.
not played live is probably the biggest con of it because I would love to see these guys live.
But Soul Soul, since you guys are just fucking master classes at making thematic albums, if you guys ever do a third album, I want you to make black and deathcore that gives people sound financial advice.
Black and
That'll be the
Deathcore
third
sound
album.
advice.
Promise me. That's the third Soul
And you gotta
Soul
have
album.
so I know Soul Soul's not from Dallas. None of them are, but anybody in Dallas will appreciate their jingle. Their Black and Deathcore financial advice company should be the 1-800 Law Boss jingle remixed. That is the only con of it, but it kind of, in a way, adds to the lore of the album. I mean, the album's perfectly named for what happened. It's they just dropped a banger and basically mic dropped and got out. I want to give a shout out to Ethan. Thank you for all the info. It's been great chatting with you on social media. And Ethan's got a new project called Thorned. They haven't dropped anything yet. He actually hasn't officially announced it. That's a SMB exclusive. So if you listen to the end of this, you get to be the first to know. If you don't do it again, we just love that you dropped this for us before you went. So thank you for doing the work.
Yeah, dude. Thank you guys so much. And thank you for giving us so much insight into the band and, just being fucking down to earth people and allowing us to play clips and do all this. All right. Final score time. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. What do you got?
All right. So I feel like we've been a little strict with our score system at times, because I don't want to pigeonhole everything into the 3, but I feel very strongly about this. I love this album. This is going to go down as one of my favorite albums of all time. I'm just going to go ahead and say that. I am going to give it a 4.2.
Wow, that's crazy. It's the same exact score that I was going to give it. Yeah, I was going to give it a 4.2. Just to be different, I'm going to give it a 4.21.
Okay, so we're giving, I hope we make it out alive, a 4.21 werewolves with alopecia.
Werewolves with alopecia. Okay,
Yeah.
4.21
Out of
werewolves
5.
with alopecia. It's 4.21 slightly gay tendency werewolves.
That's that one is the...
Well, the 2-1. He's
the 2-1.
he's on the edge, standing in a circle,
He's a genderqueer
lightly slapping
werewolf.
each other's chests.
Yeah.
Stop it. No, you stop it.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, guys, for everything. And I hope you enjoyed this review. If anybody's listening, we're just abrasive as fuck. That's just kind of our brand. So we're just going to ask you to share our shit all over the place. If you see us out and about in the wild, fucking give us a shout out. Come hang.
Subscribe, follow, whatever it is, wherever you do that type of thing. We're on every platform as far as social media, minus Parler. We're not on Parler if you're on Parler.
We're not QAnon enough.
So, but we're on everything else. YouTube, you can go see the videos that Solaire puts together for some kind of visual experience. One day we'll get cameras. That's if enough people subscribe that we can fucking afford it. If you subscribe, we don't get any more money. It's just that I need to know that people are listening before I make the investment.
Yeah.
Holler at your moms.
Yep. Praise the sun.